Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This course is about how to launch an Islamic revival. The question is, what are we trying to do when we launch an Islamic revival? We must define the goals. And these goals are the goals of so-called development. So we have to understand what these are and why they are currently distorted and how we can fix them. So that's what this lesson is about. So we have Allah Nur as-samawati wal ard. And Nur is the light of guidance, and that enables to see. Without Nur, it is dark and we cannot distinguish right from left and what is in front of us and what is behind us. So currently we are in a state of darkness. And what we are told about this darkness is that all valuable knowledge that currently exists was invented by the Europeans after the Enlightenment. And we are told that humankind has made enormous progress under the leadership of the Europeans in the past few centuries. So when we hear this story, then we understand that progress is what Europeans had, and development is what they have achieved, and underdevelopment is what we have, and backwardness is our current situation. So all of these ideas are part of Eurocentric history, which we have been taught. So we need to deconstruct this. It's one thing to learn something, but when you start in a position where you have been taught the wrong ideas, then you have to start by analyzing and taking them apart and unlearning them before you can learn the correct ideas. So deconstruct means to uncover what is not being said or which is being said indirectly, to take something apart and examine it, to look at the hidden assumptions and look at the biases and the flaws and the inconsistencies. So we have to deconstruct the Eurocentric narrative about development in order to build the Islamic narrative. So modernization theory was invented in the early 20th century by sociologist Max Weber and picked up by Talcott Parsons. And this theory says that the Western nations are the most advanced, rational, democratic, they have high standards of living, they have science and technology. In other words, they are ideal models for everybody else. And everybody else is backwards, ignorant, superstitious, and we have bad governance, and we are poor, and all the faults that we have, everything that we have is the opposite of what the West has. And progress or development means becoming more like Europe. So there are many theories like Rostow's theory, which is taught in our schools, which basically analyzes how European nations progressed in step by step, that they started with stage X and then they did stage Y and so on. And then he says that all societies must follow this same path, which is the European pattern to progress. So this is what modernization theory teaches us, and this is built into our curricula. It doesn't have to be taught explicitly. So we must understand, to deconstruct this, that history is written by the victors. There's an African proverb that until the lions get their own historians, the tales of the hunt will glorify the hunter. If you think about it, the hunter has guns and protection. The poor lion has no idea that somebody is coming to get him. They shoot them from a distance. If the lion had a chance to compete on equal terms, then they would see. But anyway, the tales always tell you about the bravery of the hunter. And so this is in the same way, victors write the history books. Those who lose the battle don't. And so they glorify their own achievements and they minimize the role of the vanquished, the losers. And so the history of the past 3 centuries has been written only by the Europeans. The others have not had a chance to examine it critically. Oops. Hello. फिर से कट हो गया क्या? सही है, बट आई वाज इन द मिडल ऑफ द टॉक. इसको मैं अब डिस्कनेक्ट करके फिर से कनेक्ट करूं क्या? अच्छा, ऑलराइट. So, are we connected here? Everybody is able to listen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes,
it's clear.
All right.
Yes,
So
sir.
we continue. So Europeans have written the history and they have made it look like they are the best and the brightest and the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to the world. So the story that we have learned is the story of the white man's burden, that the Europeans climbed out of the depths of darkness and ignorance. Why? Because they were more intelligent. They had better morality. They had the science, they had technology, they had everything good which nobody else had. And then they spread, they noticed that we are in the light and everybody else is in the dark. So they, out of the goodness of their hearts, they made the sacrifice. They left their wonderful homes and they spread out over the world to share their benefits of their advanced civilization with the rest of the humanity. So this is the story which we are being told, because it's the story from the victor's point of view. But there is another way to think about this story, and that is that Europe did rape and looting of the world. According to Ibn Khaldun, a very standard pattern in history is that when civilizations become advanced, they decline, they value in luxury, and they forget their origins. And when they become like this in their decline, then they are overcome by barbarians, because the barbarians are young and energetic and uncivilized, and so they can overcome the advanced civilization. So this is a cycle which has been going on, and it is very much like that in the Mongols. When the Mongols overtook and destroyed a large portion of the Islamic civilizations, the Mongols were barbarians and uncivilized, and Islam was very advanced. So exactly the same thing has happened in recent history, where the Europeans were backwards and primitive compared to the rest of the world, which had advanced civilizations. And because they had 3 centuries of continuous warfare with each other, in which they learned how to fight, while the rest of the world, being civilized, was at peace. And so they developed in their military tactics, and they were able to take over the world. So this is the other way to tell this same story. So to understand this better, we can look at the example of this story in modern times, the invasion of Iraq, which took place in recent times. So according to the victors, the story is that they invaded Iraq in order to save the world from weapons of mass destruction, and to rid the population of an evil dictator, and to bring democracy and freedom to the Iraqi people. But this is the cover story, exactly like the cover story of the white man's burden. So they were spreading out over the world to colonize for our benefit, not because of they wanted to exploit the world. But now if you look at the reality of what happened in Iraq, more than 1 million civilians were killed. It was all lies. There were no weapons of mass destruction. And yes, Iraq had a dictatorship, but afterwards their governance became much worse. And all the infrastructure in the country, schools, hospitals, factories, they were all destroyed. Advanced nation, which was enjoying modern comforts, they were bombed back into the Stone Age. Why was this done? It was all about power politics, the control of the oil resources of Iraq. And to top it all off, Madeleine Albright was asked, was it worth it to kill 1 million children for this purpose? And she said, yes, that's fine. This is the way of the world. So why does it matter? Why should we deconstruct these Western myths? Not because we want to blame the West and we want to we want to absolve us of blame. That has nothing to do with it. Actually, the way that the West defines development and progress is how we also define it. And so when we accept this story, then we say that, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to build up our power, and we need to invade other civilizations, and we need to take over, and we need to conquer and destroy others. So if this is what the ideal form is, then we will seek to become like them. And this is what development means: to have power, to take over other countries, to colonize, to exploit, to loot. Now, the social sciences that we have discussed in a previous lecture, these were developed to idealize and to justify European societies. So we can ask the question, is it moral to invade and destroy Iraq and Libya like they have been done in front of our eyes? Nobody has raised any questions about this in the world press. Whereas if you have one Muslim who kills 10 other people, everybody, newspaper in the world is talking about Islamic terrorism. But whole countries have been destroyed, everything bombed back to cave ages, and nobody mentions that this is an act of barbarism, this is an act of terrorism. Why? Because the social sciences of the West say that what Machiavelli, who is at the heart of modern politics, is that politics is the pursuit of power by any means. There is no question of ethics. All is fair in love and war. So when you are going to war, then you can do anything at all to win. Western philosopher Hegel said that morality arises by consensus and is enforced by the state. So it's not because the Westerns, the Europeans abandoned faith in religion. So the only way to get morality is to legislate it. You create a law, and then the state has the power to enforce the law, and that is morality. But that means that states are beyond morality because they create morality. So the state can do anything. And this philosophy has been responsible for an enormous amount of damage. So if the US has the power to bomb and kill 1 million people and take over their country, then there is no ethics, no morality which says that this is wrong, because power justifies everything. So this is the social Darwinism philosophy, that life is only about the survival of the fittest. If you eliminate the weak, this helps to advance human evolution because you eliminate the weak and the strongest survive. And so everything is fair in the pursuit of pleasure, power, profits, and worldly goals. So these are the ideas which are at the heart of the social sciences. And if we accept these ideas as this is what development means, to get more power, to get more profits, to have more pleasure, to have more worldly goods, then we will then we will say that yes, Europe is the ideal form and we need to become like them. But Islam does not define development like that. So we can look at the contrast between the European development goals and the Islamic goals. European social science tells us, economics says specifically, that the human being should pursue pleasure and the firm should pursue profits, and there is no other ethical rule. This is the highest ethical rule. As opposed to this, Islam teaches us that the goal of life is to achieve excellence in conduct, to be like our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to do excellent deeds. So Europeans say that the measure of development is how much wealth you have, and correspondingly how much power you have. So everybody in the world, all the nations are trying to maximize their GNP per capita, just amount of money, and it doesn't matter how you get this money, because that is your measure of development. But in Islam, the measure of development is the character of the people, the ma'arifat, the how much knowledge we have of Allah Ta'ala. So the European social science says that live in a jungle. The wealth should be belongs to those who have the power to get it, and the ones who have the most wealth should get even more because they are the ones who know how to increase wealth. What about the rest? Well, it will trickle down to the rest. Uh, as opposed to this, Islamic development is about the laws of civilization. Power, wealth, and knowledge, yes, these are given to people as an amana, and those who have power are responsible to protect those who are not. Those who have wealth are responsible to share with those who don't have it, and those who have knowledge are responsible to give it to the ones who don't have it. So these are radically different conceptions of civilization. Now, these development criteria govern our mindsets and our policy. The current policy is being pursued everywhere in the world, including among the Muslim countries, sad to say, is that economic growth is everything. If you can increase your growth rate from 5% to 7%, well, that's great. That is accomplishment. Nothing else matters. These growth oriented policies are implemented by the IMF and the World Bank all over, and they are taught to the policymakers who go to Harvard and Princeton and Yale and learn these economic theories and come back and apply them. That the only thing which matters is wealth. And what's the result? That there are today billions of people living under $1 a day and in misery. And at the same time, a handful of people have more than half of the wealth on the planet. This is the natural consequence of capitalism. And there is an excellent book by Naomi Klein called The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism, which details how this theory has worked and how it has been propagated throughout the world using all sorts of dirty tactics. If you look at, for example, the stories of how corporations are actually currently ruling the world and they are doing anything for the sake of profits. To get some historical examples, if you look at the tobacco industry, for decades they knew that tobacco causes cancer, but they purchased scientists and they published research to show that there was no link or to create doubt so that they could just sell their tobacco and kill people for a profit. Similar kind of story can be told about sugar today. They are hiding research which shows that sugar, the harmful effects of sugar, which has caused diabetes and other sicknesses on a large scale. Today, because of these wrong development theories, people are pursuing the wrong goals, and this has led to disastrous outcomes. In the USA, since 1980s, the fruit of all the growth has been captured by the rich. In 2010, 380 people owned half of the wealth of the planet. In 2015, 62 people. And in 2017, it was 8 people, according to the official statistics. So the wealth has been massively concentrating in the hands of very few people. There are $7 trillion in official flows which goes from the poorest countries to the richest countries. During the COVID pandemic, the wealth of the billionaires increased by about $1 trillion. So the system is rigged to funnel wealth to the already rich and keep the poor oppressed and exploited. And this is the consequence of the development theories that we are pursuing. Now, how did this world come about? One very important book in this context is Julie Rubin's. A book is called Making of the Modern University, Intellectual Transformation and the Marginalization of Morality. And she writes that in the early 20th century, in the West, social scientists were activists with a moral mission. They wanted to change the world for a better. But in the early 20th century, there came about a theory of knowledge, which is called logical positivism. And according to this theory, only science is the base of knowledge. Nothing else is knowledge. So now science is based on detached and neutral observations. And and science has nothing to say about morality. Accordingly, the positivists said that morality is just noise. There is no empirical evidence to which allows us to assess whether something is moral or not. As a result, this book shows that morality became marginalized. In the 20s, the college catalog said that our goal is to build character. If a student comes to us, we will teach him how to be a good citizen, how to be a responsible person, how to uh, serve humanity, all of these high ideals. Now, if you look at catalogs, they say we'll teach students chemistry and physics, and there's no mention of character. So basically, current Western education creates moral monsters. And this has been documented by many books. There's a book by Gertrude Himmelfarb called The Demoralization of Society, which talks about how in the 19th century, English society, British society had high morals, and later these degenerated and they were dissipated. And the two world wars are the result of the breakdown of morality in the West, which cost 50 million lives in total. So we are living through the darkest period of human history, not the most advanced and most enlightened. According to the development theories, we are living in the most advanced era, but actually, this is the darkest period. The past century has been the most brutal in human history. The two world wars killed 50 millions. There was the Holocaust of the Jews, 6 million Jews burned alive in ovens designed for this purpose. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where just for the sake of experimenting, testing the bomb, two cities were destroyed. There were concentration camps in Russia and Cambodia, Yugoslavia, Rwanda, complete destruction of Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, Syria, and economic subjugation and enslavement of vast numbers of countries. And this is just humans, and there's also massive overexploitation of planetary resources for profits by the corporations. The oceans have become polluted, vast amounts of plastic, the atmosphere is polluted. About 50% of the animals living on the planet have been destroyed. The sixth extinction by Elizabeth Colbert describes what is happening to the world. So there are many books which document the decline of morality. There is the book called The Brightest and Best, which teaches us that, which is a novel, not novel, it's a non-fiction account of how Yale graduates ran Vietnam War in an extremely brutal manner. There is a book by Zygmunt called Modernity and the Holocaust, which shows that the rationality that is the hallmark of modernity says that, well, if you think that the 6 million people are going to be an obstacle in the path of your progress, then eliminating them is the rational thing to do. There's a book called Humanity, A Moral History of the 20th Century by Glover, which lists all of the massive amounts of decline of morality that has taken place. There's a lecture by Harvard professor Michael Sandel on justice. And if you watch this lecture, it's an amazing lecture of which basically is destroying the inbuilt moral sense of the undergraduates at Harvard. It says it says that you have come here and you think that you will learn to be better human beings, but no, that you don't think that. This is not what I'm going to do. And then he teaches them. You see, remember the trolley problem. He discusses the trolley problem, that if you have a trolley and it's going to kill 6 people on one side, should you shunt it and make it kill one person on the other side? Now, this never happens in the real world. Why is this being put to the students? To teach them that it is okay to kill if there is a better goal. Because all of these Harvard students, they're going to be leaders of corporations, and they're going to learn that in order to make profits, we have to kill people. Like the owners of Nestle, they are selling milk powder to all over the world, knowing that this will cause the deaths of children. But this is what gives them profits, and there is no ethical constraints in the path of making profits. So our goal is not to explain what is wrong with the West, but to develop the Islamic alternative. But it is necessary to go and explain this because the shining image of the West is the biggest obstacle in our path to understanding Islam. So the Islamic perspective deals with the development of human beings. How can we be the best that we are supposed to be? So first we redefine knowledge. Knowledge is not about how to rule the world, how to conquer, exploit the environment, how to build guns and bombs, how to destroy the planetary atmosphere. Knowledge is about how to live. What is excellence in conduct? Now, if you look at that as the criteria of knowledge, then you will see that in the past 3 centuries, there has been no gain in knowledge. People have not learned how to live better. People have not learned how to become better human beings. So, massive social change can occur by individual effort. If we try to change the world by changing ourselves, this is the mechanism which Islam has provided us for creating change. It's not guns and bombs. The Prophet ﷺ came and he changed the world. How did he do it? He didn't have any guns and he didn't have any bombs and he didn't have any chemicals and he didn't have any computers. How did he do it? He taught people how to be the best. The West teaches us that this world is made of bricks and stones, and it's a materialist view of the world. If you have bombs and if you have guns and if you have tanks, then you can rule the world. But actually, the most powerful thing in this world is the idea. Even the bombs and um, the tanks, they come from ideas. So they come from bad ideas about how to kill, but good ideas are more powerful than the bad ones. And Islam has given us the best ideas about how we can become best. We only live once, and every human being has infinite potential. Now, the materialist views of the world says that you are just 70 kilograms, and the world is millions of tons of kilograms. So, by looking at Newton's law, there's nothing you can do. You are powerless. But the reality is different. Allah Ta'ala has made every human being equivalent to the all of humanity. Every human being is unique, and every moment of our lives is precious, and every moment can be used to create change. So, the first thing we need to do is have clarities about our goals and purpose. Suppose that we were given the power to change the world, what would we do? Today, the problem is that we don't know the answer. The vast majority of Muslims today, they would say, okay, we want to be like the West. So if I'm given the power, I will make sure that we have a lot of money, and I'll make sure that we have technology and science, and I'll make sure that we have lots of PhDs. But these are not the things that the Prophet ﷺ taught the Sahaba. What we need to do, man only has what he strives for. لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. So unless we have the right goal, we will be content with the dirt, and we will not get the great things that are in the treasure of Allah. So we must go back and examine. You see, in the Western teachings, we find a study of how Europe developed, and we found counsel and advice to us that you follow our path. First stage of development in Europe was this, so you should do that first, and then the second stage was this, and so you should do that second, and so on. So our job is to analyze how did the ignorant and backwards Bedouin become leaders of the world? What was the training that was given to them by the Prophet ﷺ? What was the knowledge, Allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam, that Allah Ta'ala gave them that enabled them to become the leaders? We have to look at this pattern and we have to try to replicate this. So we have studied that development is about enrichment of human lives, not the accumulation of wealth. So Allah Ta'ala has told us the use of wealth. We use wealth to feed, clothe, house everyone. Society is about social interactions, about building families, neighborhoods, communities, and the greater family. All of the creation is the family of God. So we need to, this earth has been given to us as an amana, so we have to preserve it and protect it and take care of it and leave it in better condition than we found it. All of these things are exactly the opposite of the development lessons that the West has taught to us. So, some of the radical ideas that Islam teaches us is that you don't have to worry about the outcomes. We don't have to create heaven on earth. Heaven is waiting for us in the akhirah. Here, we need to engage in the process. We need to be part of the battle for the change. The West is all about outcomes. It's winning that matters, and losers don't get to say anything. But Islam teaches us that it's how you play the game that counts. It's not whether you win or lose. If you win, you are ghazi, and if you lose, you are shaheed. These outcomes are in the hands of Allah. But our job is to put the best that we have into striving to achieve the rules, the patterns that we have been taught. That is what Deen tells us, the goals which we should strive for, but it tells us only to struggle for them. It is the journey which matters. And so success is not sometime far in the future when we develop the Khilafah or when we arrive at the ideal society. No, success is achieved at this moment when I do what Allah Ta'ala wants me to do. Then that is all. At this time, at this moment, if I am doing what the order of Allah is, then I have achieved success. So this is radically different. It's not outcome oriented. It's every moment is a test, and in every moment we can succeed by following the orders of Allah, and in every moment we can fail by obeying the nafs or the shaitan. So instead of having external goals about how to change the world, we have to have the right goals: how to purify my heart, how to achieve excellence in conduct. And the measure of success is right there. If in our heart we feel a greater connection to Allah, then we have succeeded. Every morning, Allah Ta'ala, when we wake up, Allah Ta'ala gives us life and gives us a day which is a treasure for us. And it is meant that we should sell this day and buy the pleasure of Allah. So every day we are in the test, and every day we can succeed, and every day we can fail. So the human development paradigm says that that wealth is to be used to produce better human beings. In the economics paradigm which we are taught, human beings are human capital. We have to teach everybody how to produce. The value of a human being is according to how much money he can earn. And human lives are for sale. They can be sold and bought in the labor market. But Islam teaches us that human beings are the best of the creation. Their lives are not for sale for money. So how to use our lives in a way that makes us precious? This is teachings of Islam. So the environment that we have, the circumstances that we face, these are the training grounds for us. And our development is the goal. So in the West, an argument is given against God that this is supposed to be the best of the worlds, but we see so many problems, so many tragedies, so much suffering, so many times that the good people lose and the bad people win. So how can this be the creation of God? How can this be the best of the creations of God? So we are taught that this world was created with fitna and bloodshed. The purpose, Allah, the angel said that there will be fitna and bloodshed. So these circumstances that we face, This is the design of the dunya. It is to test us. If there is fitna, then our job is to struggle against this. And so we are being tested to see what we do in these hard and difficult circumstances. So we have to realize the potential that has been given to us by Allah and to try to develop it. This is development, not acquiring as much wealth as Qarun. Similarly, we have to serve humanities for the sake of the love of Allah. This is the in an ideal society, what we are trying to look at is, are human beings being allowed and being helped and being encouraged to develop their potential? This is the measure. If today there are more people who are behaving better, then we have progressed. If today we have more people who are behaving worse, then we have declined. So the measure of progress is not the acquisition of wealth, it is the development of character, it is the development of knowledge, it is the development of community, social ties, it is to help the poor for the sake of the love of Allah. So the in Islamic version of development, we need to change lives in order to change the world. And so, how do we change lives? Well, the first point is internal change. We can change our life, regardless of what is happening in the world. I can change myself. And as we discussed in the previous lecture, we make dawah to others with as an intention, as an instrument for creating this change within ourselves. And then we reach those people whom we can with our message, reach our own community. And remember that development is moral development. If I am a better person today, if I have more connection with Allah, if I have greater integrity, then the world has improved. And now we understand that if we evaluate this carefully by any standard, the world has been in decline for the past 3 centuries. It's not been progressing. And the rise of the Western civilization has a lot to do with it. Because of their rise to power, they have spread the morals of the barbarians. They have made the conquest of the world, the conquest of the world is the source of their current power and wealth. And their social theories justify and glorify this. They're saying this is what power and wealth is, and get it however you can. And that is what it means to develop. So this has been moral decline. So that's the end of my lecture. And so I'll stop here and we will open the floor for questions.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahab. I
Wa
am
alaikum
Hamad
assalam.
and I am hosting the meeting instead of Muiz Bhai. He is busy right now. So
Jazakallah.
anyone, Jazakallah khaira for your lecture. Now anyone want to ask anything? Please raise your hand and
Laila Al
go for the
Zain.
question.
Laila has asked.
Yes.
Oh, she's okay. Saif Ali.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa
Jazakumullah
alaikum
khairan
assalam.
for your lecture and this knowledge. I was struck by a thing that you said regarding the outcomes versus the process. The
Yes.
Western education is all about what happens in the end, and the religious or the more traditional Islamic perspective is about how you get to the end and not what happens in the end, which is the process.
Exactly.
And this is very similar. I'll just it's a comment, and I just like to share it with you because I was really happy to hear this, that I had when I studied game theory in my PhD program, I was thinking about this, and then I happened upon a book called Shakespeare, something about Shakespeare, and the book is imagining or recreating the world in which Shakespeare lived. The author has used historical sources, and the world in which he lived was a world in which the Bible was recited regularly at street corners and churches, and it was a part of the life of people in a way that it is not today, in the sense that I can imagine that the person at that time thought himself to be a part of a story, like the the narrative framework that an individual and a society used to imagine themselves or to place themselves was the story. And at the end of a story, what is left behind is just the moral. It doesn't really matter what happened in the story. It matters what you learned from it. What was the morality of the story? And in that society, the idle entertainment was kind of games and playing, people who played cards or gambled or something like that. It was sort of the meaningless fun. And if you look at the society today, the main narrative instrument has changed totally from the story to a game. You use the word process, but I thought about it as a game. That the game is the way that an individual and societies imagine themselves. Like that's what they think life is. It's not a story, but it's a game. Especially if you look at social credit system in China, where they think that it's a game where you just have to optimize the outcomes for everybody. And the movies, which are stories where heroism and good character, etc., occurs, are considered the idle entertainment or something that's meaningless that you just do for fun. It doesn't really mean anything. So it's a total inversion, exact mirror image of the world that I read about in the book, in Shakespeare's life. But the one thing that the people say about game theory and things like that, they say that the mechanism design is meant to be I mean, there is a morality involved in it, in the sense that we want it to do the best thing for everybody,
There
or
are
we
many
want
other
to.
people who also want to ask questions. So if you can.
Yeah, that's it, sir. So I just wanted to say that there is a kind of morality that's presented in the games, when you do game theory and things like that, or
Definitely. In game
outcomes.
theory, the morality is very simple. You're out there to win, and it doesn't matter. You don't care about anything else. And that leads to very strong contradictions, like in the prisoner's dilemma, where if you care about others, both people achieve better results. But if you only care about yourself, then both people suffer. So that's one of the standard paradoxes.
Right.
Next, Sayyid Haider.
Mm.
Oh, I see.
So, Assalamu alaikum. So
Wa
the
alaikum salam.
fruit of modernity are being enjoyed by maybe 20% or less of the world's population, but the
Yes,
price is paid for by the 80% of the world population.
correct.
So but this discussion that we are having is only among those people who are enjoying the fruits of modernity. So how can this discourse be passed on to those people who would want to make a change in what is happening? So because and then the question is, how in our limited lifetime we can expect that some change will come out. This is just the realization. Noam Chomsky and you are all talking about the same thing, but how will the
Yes.
change come?
Very good question. And our next lecture will be about that, how to rebuilding Islamic societies. Basically, we just follow the pattern that the Prophet ﷺ showed us. He created from scratch a revolution which changed the world. His pattern is the same pattern that we need to follow. But this will be discussed in detail, the strategy. Today we are just looking at the big picture, but the step-by-step approach I will talk about in next lecture, inshallah.
Nadia also has a question with me.
Please go
Assalamu
ahead.
alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So my question is that, after the creation of nation states, after modernization, the global West also, especially the Muslim countries, they also adopted the social structure from the West, like
Yes,
how to
that's correct.
organize their
That is correct.
how to organize their society and the political system.
Very
However,
good.
yes, so however, the West has this notion of accountability, which lacks in our countries, and this is due to moral degradation of our people. So how can we blame that on the West?
Well, first of all, where is this accountability? Who was held to account for the destruction of Iraq, for the destruction of Libya,
No,
for
I was
the
talking about
rebellion?
I was talking about how their cities function, and they seem to be functioning well. I'm talking about the internal system that we have adopted, the political system that we have also adopted. We adopted, I think, the parliament system and how to create councils, and but they are able to hold their elected officials accountable if something goes wrong in the city, whereas we cannot do that. We have no voice.
Was Trump
In our,
held accountable for his deeds?
yeah,
So
that's true. That's true
I
also.
think that there is a vast difference between the projection done by the West and the reality of the West. And basically, this is what my whole lecture is about, and also the course, that when we believe these lies that the West is telling us about how we are so great and wonderful, then the path to progress becomes blocked. Then we start saying, okay, since parliament is so wonderful, we should have that. And all Western systems, we accept uncritically their claims that this is wonderful. When in fact, all of their systems, when you look at them in detail, whether it's democracy, whether it's accountability, they are full of huge problems, which are covered over by the Eurocentric narrative. And so basically that's why it's essential to expose this so we understand that this is not an ideal for us to follow.
डेमोक्रेसी के लिए कंपनीज पैसे देती हैं, जिसको ज़्यादा पैसे देती है उसकी तरफ का
So the great democracy is basically for purchase. The corporations own the USA and they spend millions of dollars on campaigns buying politicians, and it's legal. So that's the governance system that they have. Yes, Amin Jibril.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.
Thanks, Zaman. And mashallah, you are very well read. And though, let me be a little bit of a devil's advocate, and I'll try to be very brief, inshallah. So we saw and of course you elaborated the negative side of the capitalism, the democracy, and all that West has built. But I guess I would like you to that the evil didn't start from West, right? I mean, whoever is powerful historically, they've used it, abused it, and in that sense, the democracy and the capitalism seems to be a little bit benign, and also getting a lot of value in terms of technology and all that. That's also a continuum. And the most recent experience is China, which more or less adapted Western economics and brought so many of their people out of poverty and giving them a relatively, I don't know how would you prescribe it, is a better life or not. So yeah, that itself is a question. Would you, how would you characterize the Chinese experience? And of course, I'll inshallah maybe next week, probably you said it. I'd like to hear, what would be an alternate, and what are the measurables that you would be using it?
You see, one perspective which Islam teaches us, which nobody else has, is that this world is a temporary place. The Prophet ﷺ said that you are here under the shade of tree, taking rest for a little while, and then you will go. So the real success is the success on the day of judgment. So temporarily, for a few centuries, the West has been in power, but we were in power for 1,000 years. So temporary rise and fall, these are not things which make any difference. This is just look at the Chinese experience. All right, they are they doing things which are morally admirable? Are they doing the things which will bring them closer to God? Do they understand why we were created? What our purpose in this life is? What will happen to us after death? And are they preparing for that? If they're not, then it's just games. Lahwan wa la'b, as the Quran says. So
Where they better be? They're torturing
Now,
people.
do you allow me
torturing the
a follow-up?
Muslims.
Do you allow me a follow-up? So,
Yes.
in terms of the Islamic civilization, it's going to be all about the next life, or you think the Islamic civilization will create a better life for people in this world as well?
Well, I think that basically there is a hadith that if you seek to please Allah, then Allah Ta'ala will take care of all of your needs. When Muslims were seeking to please Allah, then our civilization had worldly power and wealth.
दुनिया
But
को
if you
थोड़ी सी
make
याद करो,
the
are they
world
happier?
of goal, then this you will be enslaved by it.
Are they happier? Are the people nicer? Are the people kinder to their children? कहाँ पे suicide rate कहाँ ज़्यादा है? कहाँ पे child abuse ज़्यादा है? These are the developmental goals.
So, as I've been trying to say, that we look at the character, the families, is there love between people, is there compassion? These are the characteristics on which we judge civilizations, not whether they have money and technology and science. Yes.
So in terms of the fruits of modernity, has
Yes.
there been done that in the pre-modern era, the quality of life was better or worse? Because when you talk about the perils of modernity, then people say, you have so much maternal mortality rate back in those era, which you don't have, and people are living longer. And of course, we don't take into account the price being paid for by the impoverished in the world. But is there a comparison that is done that life now
There are
is
lots
better?
of comparisons, but the most important one is Easterlin's paradox. He showed that massive amounts of wealth has accumulated in the West, but the level of happiness in the society has not changed. And there is a book by Lane called Loss of Happiness in Market Economies. When everything is for sale, then your social life declines, and our source of happiness is society and friends. If you just think about it, think of a small village where people don't have much to eat, and when it rains, the roof leaks. But um, the people are uh, fond of each other, they love each other, they take care of each other. And think of a multimillionaire whose wife hates him, and he's divorced, and his children don't like him, and he has no friends. So who do you think will be happier? So basically, we get to create the.
Your death by bombs, is it? Modern bombing.
All right. So next.
इतने लोग मर जाते हैं, बस maternal mortality कम हुई है, but there was no death by bombing, there were no drone attacks.
If you take into account
if
the deaths
can I
by
ask maybe one
technology,
more?
then you
You
see that the net outcome has not been good. Yes. Anybody else?
Yes, Amin bhai, you can ask again.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. So do you think the sort of a Western, mindset of prosperity and the value system, are they mutually exclusive, or?
Yani, the pursuit of wealth and power is entirely different from the pursuit of
Happiness.
excellence in conduct.
Yes, Safari, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, some Muslims, they are Muslim, they believe in the message, but they say that the means, the Western means, like the big data, all this, they said they think that this is necessary in order so is there some stipulation about whether we should kind of ditch these means or use these means, or is there a rule, or is it a bit of both? What about the means to the
Basically, you see, once you set your purpose correctly, you make the goal to be the service of God, the service of mankind for the sake of the love of Allah, then you will do everything that is necessary. If it is necessary to use machine learning, then you will do that. It's the purpose which defines it. If your purpose is to innamal amal bin niyat, so the same amal can lead to disaster and the same amal can lead to great success. So it is
Would you say that there is nothing intrinsically wrong in the means in the sciences or in like in the big?
yes, but one of the things that has happened in the West, for example, is that means have been converted into goals. Wealth is never by itself a goal of life, because you use wealth to buy things. Yeah, and the Prophet ﷺ said that man says, Ke, mera mal, my wealth, but his wealth is only what he uses up, and the rest is belongs to his inheritors. So people have this illusion from the first of times that the wealth is the pursuit, the goal of life. So if you, as long as the goal is something else, then in the process of achieving that goal, you can use all instruments that you have. But the problem is that these instruments become goals themselves, and that is the source of problems. And they have made freedom a goal. Freedom is not a goal. The freedom is to do something good. If you have the freedom to do something good and you do it, then it is valuable. If you have the freedom to do something evil and you do it, then the freedom is harmful to you.
Doctor, someone on YouTube asked this question.
Yes.
Please answer if you think it is relevant. How long it will take to introduce interest-free economy in the country? You can
In
say in
the
the word.
outcome versus process slide, I said that we don't have to wait, and we don't have to, maybe it will never get happen. Maybe it will be, interest will remain in the picture for until eternity. This does not matter. For us, we achieve success if we understand what the system is, we know how to struggle against it. And if we work against it today, if I don't take interest on a loan today, then I have succeeded in eliminating interest from my life. Success is in the moment, and in now it doesn't have to wait for outcomes.
Jazakallah. Anyone else want to ask, or we should end this meeting?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Saab, Jazakallah.
Hello. I have one question. I just want to know. I think it is out of the topic. One guy, he asked me. He is giving Qarzai Hasnat, one of the mosque. So he's asking, does he still liable to pay zakat on that money or not? Thank
Please
you.
ask fatwa from Mufti. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Jazakallah khaira, Dr. Saab. It was really a wonderful session. Jazakallah khaira. After this, we end this session, and inshallah we will meet at the same time on next Sunday, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah everyone who participated.